What is the worst thing that has ever happened to you in a relationship? He left his MySpace open on my laptop and I snooped. He had been selling himself on Craigslist for gay unprotected intimacy. He was also an insane socialist supporter and had an entire secret profile dedicated to a dictator and was posting horrible videos and other hate crimes. I was young and he had gotten me pregnant, which I thought was a burst protection, but he posted that he poked holes in all his protection to do it on purpose. I had a miscarriage of 10 weeks due to the stress of finding all this out at once. I immediately dumped him and got myself tested and couldn't freaking believe it. But I was clean. He got my name tattooed on him after we broke up in an attempt to win me back. When that didn't work, he robbed a Radio Shack that he worked at for money to buy me an engagement ring. He went to jail, and for my latest snooping, appears to have gotten his crap together. Wish him the best, but holy crap, what a rough time that was. Story 2. My ex took substances at a rave. I only got intoxicated. Went to a city 4 hours away to the rave with a crew. They became violent and erratic. It was bizarre. Anyways, drove him home the entire time he was saying voices were telling him to hurt me the whole way back home. I drove him to his grandpa's house, and then he chased me and announced he was going to harm me. I called his parents and my mom, crying. My mom came, and the neighbors called the cops. Like 8 cop cars came, and an ambulance tackled him, took him to a mental ward, diagnosed him with type 2 bipolar mood disorder. I was on the phone with my friends. I went begging them to tell me if he was on substances. I told his parents in the hospital or paramedics. His mega-religious parents blamed me for putting substances into their boy. Mind you, he was a 25, 220-pound beast. I was 22 and 120 pounds. I told him what happened because he didn't remember. He wanted to get back together. He never corrected his parents, and was excited to invite me to a family wedding as long as I apologized to his parents for what I did, specifically his mom. I was so done. I broke up with him on the spot. I know it sounds so evil to admit I relished in his ugly crying and whys of confusion. This was 2 years after the event, and dealing with his parents constantly criticizing me. I was so done with his excuses for his parents, saying I was the devil. Story 3. Unbeknownst to me, the girl I was dating had links to organized crime in her city. She used to supplement her income with dealing and organizing escorts for guys. I had a big argument over the phone. She got intoxicated and fell down the stairs in her house. She called up her friends and told them I had pushed her, so they came over to sort me. Fortunately, or unfortunately, they got the wrong house and attacked my neighbors. The police were called and multiple arrests were made. The police later raided my girlfriend's house. Large quantities of substances were found and she ended up doing time. In 2013, she crashed her car while out of her mind on booze and substances and was pronounced departed at the scene. Story 4. He passed away. He wasn't feeling great all week. His pressure was really high. Told him to go to the doctor, go to the fire station next door. Didn't listen. Started feeling like crap on Monday and passed away Friday night. He came in from the garage to see when dinner would be done. We danced in the kitchen and I sent him outside for another 30 minutes. I found him asleep on the garage floor when I went out to tell him dinner was ready. Wondered why he lay down in the garage to nap instead of coming inside. I realized his lips were blue. Called 911 and started CPR. The fire station was next door, so they were there in less than a minute. They said he had a pulse, so I went inside to pack a few things for the hospital. Someone came inside to tell me it was all over. He was only 41. Lost him almost 5 years ago. Our 20th anniversary would be next week. I'm taking the day off from work to do something we would have enjoyed. Story 5. I met my now ex-wife in 2018 and we married in 2022. The high point of a loving, fun, happy relationship. In 2023, she had a burst of success in her career as a stage actor. Got a huge ego and decided she could have whatever she wanted. So she started dating a female colleague of ours while we were, by her own admission, still happily married, fell in love, and decided she didn't want to be married to a man anymore. I went from happily kissing my wife every morning to realizing I needed to move out within a matter of days. This sucked, of course, but I'm not even getting started. Because this all went down while we were rehearsing for a stage show, we were starring opposite each other. By the time the show opened, it was clear our marriage was over. Every night, twice a night on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, I had to go through a scene where her character aggressively criticizes me, often with the audience joining in. Then she forgives me and we get married on stage. I did this 22 times while I knew my marriage was over. She was absolutely horrible about feeling out boundaries during this period, and not only did she bring her girlfriend to the show multiple times, they parked at a table right outside the dressing room, so the only way for me to get backstage was to walk by them or go straight through the audience. I was having uncontrollable crying fits and panic attacks between acts, and a couple of people even asked if I was cruel or cheating because they couldn't believe someone could be so vindictive. But she wasn't being vindictive. She's just a narcissist, and I was too shocked and traumatized to stick up for myself. On the last night of the show, I was freaking out and wishing I could just pilot my body like a mech suit and just stop feeling anything. And then it actually happened. My body was going to the right places. My voice was singing the right notes, but the world was so quiet I could hear my heartbeat. It was honestly awesome. Like my entire nervous system was finally giving me a break from being harmed for 2 weeks. I told my therapist about this, calling it my first flow state as a performer. She identified it as a dissociative episode, a symptom of PTSD, and it happened a couple more times at different gigs, and it was way less awesome. The whole thing was by far the worst experience of my life, and it just kept going for 2.5 weeks until the show closed and I had to dive full steam to separating my life from the woman I was sure I'd grow old with. I hear she's been leaning hard into cosplaying as a lesbian by getting a hideous buzz cut, which has screwed up her casting prospects. She also managed to get fired from her job for being a generally awful NPD person. Story 6. My ex used to be in love with this girl he barely knew years before he was with me. He took her rejection hard, but I never knew the full extent of it until years later. A couple of years ago, days before my 30th birthday, he ran into her randomly. He then proceeded to text his friend things about how he's not over her, how good she looked, he's not attracted to me anymore, he feels trapped in the relationship, wants to try things with her again, etc. And text her as well. Meanwhile, it was completely one-sided and she hasn't even thought about him in years. Shortly after this happened, I found a letter in her home that he wrote years ago, right after they broke up. That was written to her that he never got rid of. It wasn't a nice letter about how much he loved her. No, it was an angry, graphically violent, hate-filled letter about how she's nothing more than a worthless witch who deserves to pass away and all the ways in which he wants to harm her. I couldn't believe this was the person I had been living with for the last 2 years. He tried to downplay it like it was no big deal and it was from a long time ago, and begged me not to tell her or anyone, which I stupidly listened until a year later, when I saw he was still following her on Instagram after I threatened to tell her if he even so much as looked in her direction ever again. We met up for coffee and I told her everything, exposing his secret, where she thanked me and proceeded to immediately block him on everything. It was an extremely healing moment for me. Story 7. We talked a lot about having children through the relationship. She told me it would happen after we got married, bought her a huge ring, paid for the destination wedding, then it became after the honeymoon, 3 weeks in Europe, which I understood. Honeymoon was a solid 8 months after the wedding. Intimacy dried up after the wedding. The day after the honeymoon was over, she told me she didn't know if she wanted kids. We discussed this for another 5 months where she refused to decide. I told her finally she had to go live with her mother until she figured it out. She came back and told me that it wasn't that she didn't want kids, but that I would be a bad father, and she then packed her things and left. I think it was likely a combination of factors, but she was hoping the desire to have kids would grow, but it never did. 7 years of my life. Story 8. I was 18 years old and was not on speaking terms with my family. I moved in with my boyfriend, and a month later, there was a knock at the door. It was a young woman asking for my boyfriend. I made myself scarce and went into the kitchen, trying not to be jealous. She yells, "Do you know I'm pregnant with him?" Punched to the gut. I still went on to marry and have a child with him before realizing what an awful situation I'd gotten myself into. Seriously, parents who bail on their kids at 18 suck. Left me to my own devices. I had no trusted confidant or friends to give me sound advice. I wouldn't wish circumstances like that on anyone. Story 9. He talked me into giving up my awesome apartment that I stupidly let him move into once his lease ended, to move to another town with him. We couldn't really afford the new apartment. He needed my name on the lease to even get it. His mom was not disabled or incompetent, just a very scared, pitiful little woman who wouldn't work or live alone. So she moved in with us. I took care of her, cooked and cleaned. He came home from work one day talking about his work wife and asked if it would be an issue. I said of course not. Then he increasingly started being a schmuck. 4 months later, he told me I needed to find a new place to live. When I went to get my things and my cats, he had his mom guarding him like I was some crazy person. I felt so unbelievable and disrespectful after our years together. I felt like I was being disposed of without a care in the world. He packed my stuff and his mom kept some of my things. I just wanted away so badly at that point I didn't bother with it. I found a little apartment in my hometown and he moved his work wife in and married her. He strung me along on an engagement for a long time. I'm still single and very happy with it, honestly. Story 10. The amount of messed up things my ex did to me, I could write a book. This one is definitely on the podium. My ex tried renting me out to his buddies without my knowledge or consent. 3 of his friends. They paid $75 to $150 each. Imagine my horror when I'm in bed watching YouTube and his best friend comes into the bedroom and starts casually doing stuff. Imagine my even bigger horror after I freaked the hell out and kicked friend out. Friend went to my ex and their 2 other friends demanding his money back. I followed behind with a tennis racket, screaming at my ex's friend to get the hell out of my house. He's still screaming about his $150. I enter the living room and my ex and their other friends are still standing there with their Johnsons out. Like he straight up planned to have his friends run on a train on me and I was just supposed to go, okay. I'll never forget the straight primal fear that I might have to fight 4 men to get out. But they all walked out after getting their refunds. My ex rationalized it by telling me that if I really loved him, I'd do anything for him, and he needed beer money. Story 11. She said yes to my proposal, not because she actually wanted to be with me, but because she thought getting married was something she was supposed to do. I.e., that's what people do, go to school, grow up, get married. Other women her age are married already. She didn't want to be the only one not good enough to have a husband, etc. Trying to make a good marriage with someone who doesn't actually want to be with you is a special kind of hell. That's okay though. After 24 years, she finally came clean and admitted she did not want to be with me and filed for divorce. Nicest thing she ever did. Story 12. My partner of over a decade confessed that he'd gotten a girl pregnant, and he was 30 years old. He only confessed because she had already had the baby and he'd already had the paternity test, which confirmed he was the father and that he'd have to start paying child support. This meant not only was he cheating on me, but he obviously wasn't using protection. It's a miracle I never caught an STD. It's truly one of the most shocking moments of my life when he confessed. I didn't cry or scream, I was just stunned. He then tried to convince me that this could potentially be a good thing, saying it would be kind of like we had our own kid. Except it wouldn't be anything like having our own kid. This child has a mother who isn't me and wouldn't even be living with us the vast majority of the time. We separated for several months, but because of how long we had been together, all our shared experiences, memories, and history, I was stupid and gave him a second chance to see if we could salvage the relationship. Once we were back together, he became very verbally and emotionally cruel, and I found out he was still cheating on me. I'd never been the type of person to snoop through my partner's things, but I became that paranoid person who was constantly going through his phone, computer, work bag, and pants pockets. That's how I found out the cheating had been going on for years, with many different girls. Looking back, there were red flags, but hindsight is 2020, of course. I finally ended things for good due to the cheating, knowing he would never stop. The fact that we would have this child in our lives that was the result of his infidelity, emotional cruelty, and some other really messed up stuff that happened. When I was packing my things to leave, he begged me not to go and had the audacity to say he couldn't believe I was throwing our relationship away. Didn't care about our relationship. We just wanted someone to pay half the bills, clean the house, run errands, and take care of the pets. I'm thankful I finally left. Story 13. My first boyfriend canceled to meet up with me at the last minute. I found out he canceled to meet my childhood best friend. He then broke up with me and immediately started dating her. I found out they slept together through a mutual friend. They split up about 3 weeks after getting together. He got back in touch with me. I still loved him and believed all the nice things he said. We fooled around. When he got what he wanted, he became nasty with me again. I told him I missed my time with a month and he accused me of lying. I went for termination. I refused to come at first. I needed a guardian figure, so I asked someone I was friendly with. It was another guy. I trusted him and he was very supportive. My ex found out and accused me of trying to make him jealous. He said he'd come with me, but I needed to find a different guardian. Just before the termination, he said we could start fresh once I went through with it. Afterward, he said he didn't want to be with me anymore because it was too much. I finally cut him off. I won't lie, I loudly badmouthed him to anyone who would listen. I really didn't care anymore. I got back in touch months later and tried to make amends. His new girlfriend had recently broken up with him and I felt bad for him. He then found out the reason his girlfriend had broken up with him was because she discovered how he had treated me. He told me to tell her everything I said about him was a lie. So yeah, screw that dude. Story 14. He was convinced that I had bulimia and went to my parents to convince them before ever confronting me. I denied it because it wasn't true, but no one believed me. He threatened to leave me if I didn't admit it, and made me explain and recount certain events in the past where he thought I ratcheted after I ate. He gaslit me so bad that I even second-guessed myself. I was young and didn't want to lose him, so I considered just going along with it so it would all stop and we could go back to normal. To this day, I'm traumatized that people don't believe me about things and I need concrete evidence, cameras, paper trails, witnesses to back me up because my word isn't good enough. Story 15. Oh, I've got a great one. I just deployed to Afghanistan in the army during the surge. I called her after a week on Skype and heard she was in the airport from the background noise. I asked her where she was going casually and she told me, I'm flying to go see this guy I'm at so I can know what we have is real. It took me a second to process that sentence. I told her that not getting on the plane would be your indicator, and if you're in a place with this relationship that you need to do this, then I'll make it easier for you and just break up with you. Good luck with that. And I hung up with her and blocked her on everything. She would send me emails detailing how great he was and how much better he was than me, and I just keep blocking emails. Within about a month or so, she was emailing me from different accounts again, apologizing and wanting to explain and get back together. Apparently, the guy 3 states over with a fiancé and the toddler at home did not in fact turn out to be the right choice. The amount of effort she put out reduced over time. It took a few years. It's been a couple years now since she's tried to reach out to me. No need to say sorry. I know I dodged an intercontinental ballistic missile there. Story 16. I found out an ex had a friend one summer when I was out of town. Later found out it was more than that. Someone shared emails showing they talked crap about me all the time. They were so close, people thought we broke up. When I got back in town, she was too busy doing something with him to get together with me. We'd been together almost 2 years at that point. It was so blatant, even my dad commented that it was messed up and he never paid attention to that kind of crap. I had to wait. I was young and lacked enough self-respect to walk away. I waited and spent the next few months pretending everything was fine. I did the old, what am I doing wrong shtick. I wasn't perfect, but don't treat me like some schmuck. I was mad at her for years. As I got older, I've been more mad at myself for taking it. That said, she still was terrible and didn't deserve to be treated like that. It's not a very juicy or exciting example, but it messed me up for a while. Story 17. Reconnected with a guy I'd known as a kid. I was told he and his wife were coming to the end of a lengthy divorce. It became official. He added his name to my existing lease and we upgraded to a bigger apartment. Spent the weekend at his parents' where he'd have this time with his 3 kids. We'd moved fast, but I agreed with meeting the kids at a slower pace. Between being gone a night here and there as a truck driver, he was at the apartment 3 to 4 nights a week. We started talking about getting a house together and visited a couple open houses. Finally, one day, I opened up a piece of his mail, which ended up being bank loan stuff in regards to the house he and his wife had just purchased. Things hit the fan, and over a speakerphone conversation, he told me he didn't know me and I was crazy for saying we lived together. It was like the Twilight Zone. I've been through some doozies, but was my first early 20s dumb as hell relationship mistake. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 18. We were having some issues regarding intimacy, and it was a huge insecurity for me, but I was trying really hard and working on it, and then she told me she was having issues being attracted to me. So I spent that night crying on the couch through the night, and apparently, me crying woke her up, so she walks over, asks me what's wrong, and I tell her, and she goes, "I thought we already talked about that." So I say, "Yeah, but I'm still really upset." So she says, "Okay, well, you're being loud," and proceeds to shut the door and go back to sleep while I'm still in the middle of a breakdown. Story 19. I had a flight back home from visiting my family. Arriving home on my 21st birthday. I've been with my ex-partner for about 2 years and we've been living together for over a year. I planned to be home on my birthday so we could be together and celebrate. I landed around noon and called him to pick me up from the airport. Really looking forward to seeing him. I hadn't heard from him all day despite letting him know when I was boarding, my arrival time, and that there were no delays. Then when I called, he didn't pick up. His phone was off. I called again and texted. No response. I ended up calling my best friend and having her pick me up from the airport. Then waited over 5 hours at her house before hearing anything from him. I later found out that, according to his story, he'd gone out the night before and had gone so hammered he couldn't find our apartment keys. He tried to kick down the door, splintered our door frame. The cops were called on him because he scared the hell out of our 70-plus-year-old neighbor who had lived next door to us for over 20 years. Somehow he was arrested. The cops just helped him find his keys. I also found out that while I was gone, he had brought random guys he met at bars. Still not sure about this. Over and was smoking cigarettes with them inside the apartment. They did nothing for my birthday. No gifts, no card, barely acknowledged it, and no dinner. Honestly, I was like, okay, you actually just hate me. I should have left then, but it was the beginning of the inevitable death spiral to the end. Many other similarly awful things happened in the following months before we entangled ourselves from each other, but this one stung pretty bad. Story 20. I came out of work one day and he had just moved me and my son into his home, which was mid-renovation. No flooring, bare drywall, just in really bad shape. Turns out he needed money to finish it, and that was me. I went into shock, doing the best I could, and he spent the next 3 months going absolutely crazy. Turns out he had no teeth, having pulled them all 6 years prior because teeth led to health issues, so he wore full dentures at 40. Surprise. He talked to Jesus, saw Mary in the bathroom tiles, and became convinced that I was cheating on him with everyone, including my own son, which was so gross. He wouldn't let me in the front yard, wouldn't let me walk the road, wouldn't let me open windows or doors. I couldn't go anywhere without him. I had my work desk in the living room and there were cameras everywhere. My son wasn't allowed upstairs and I wasn't allowed downstairs. He said if my son tried to take him, he'd walk away with no legs. But that's not a threat, sure. He called me awful names and would scream at me for an hour if I looked out the car windows or made eye contact with a man in public. He would take my debit and credit cards, making thousands of dollars in home renovation purchases that I didn't agree to, but apparently he needed to see my buy-in. He made me pay for everything. There was extreme cruelty. He didn't hit me, but threw things and punched walls. One day after 3 months of this insanity, with my son and his mom there, because it was the only way he would be safe as we left, we packed up suitcases and left. I moved in with my parents, $50,000 in debt from him, with severe anxiety and PTSD as well. I went to file police reports and found out that nothing he did was illegal because he didn't physically lock me inside, and apparently, I could have left at any time. And yeah, I could have, but I was frozen. He made it so I was completely broke, taking my credit score from 790 to 570 in less than 2 months so I couldn't even rent an apartment. He laughed when I cried about that. I told him I couldn't leave because of that, and he laughed. I didn't want to move in with my parents, who thought he was great because he would be so sweet around them. The second they turned their back, he'd call me a witch, ask me why I am the lemon in the family, and say, being with you is so freaking embarrassing, but God told me you have to do it. So yeah, I'm still living with my parents at 47 years old, trying to rebuild my life from the negatives. I knew him and was in love with him for 2 years before the move, and in that 2 years and 3 months, he almost ruined my life. I'm honestly thinking about writing a book, but don't know who'd want to read something so awful. Don't ignore the red flags, people. Story 21. I endured 6 years of emotional and physical cruelty due to her issues with alcohol. She's one of those people who, as soon as alcohol graces their lips, becomes an absolute monster. An immediate mood change, literally after the first sip. She even looked physically different in her face. Think Luan Platter's mom from King of the Hill. That's the perfect example of what I'm talking about. It was such a long time to be with someone, so when it finally kicked her out, I was completely lost but felt liberated. I finally restarted my life at 34 and I'm doing very well. Though my attempts at relationships since have been fruitless, I chalk it up to being more sensitive to red flags, which is good because I'm absolutely terrible at ending relationships. However, it has made me overly hesitant to allow myself to be vulnerable in the first place. I probably ruined a good opportunity just from not wanting to let someone in, but it is what it is. I'm content with my life now. Story 22. I was in a relationship with M and met T at a friend's party. T and I agreed that this was just a friendship. One day T was in town. All of us went to a few shops but lost track of each other and T and I were left, so I texted M that T and I were going to a meetup place and found us and accused me of liking T more than him. I was heartbroken that he was so angry and luckily my friend T was sleeping over at my house, so I thought, at least I have a friend with me. T essayed me that night. I passed out and woke up to a Facebook update saying M changed his relationship status from in a relationship to single. Story 23. My spouse of 10 years had a midlife crisis. Instead of buying a convertible or something, he chose to cheat on me months after I gave birth to our second son. She was half his age and barely 21. He left me for her. I was trying to survive the early days with an infant and a toddler in tow. Needless to say, I was completely blindsided. But wait, there's more. While I was reeling from what just happened, he made his rounds with all of her friends and family, spinning some BS story, ultimately trying to convince them this was somehow my fault. I didn't want to look like the bad guy. I honestly don't know if I believe in romantic love anymore. Story 24. I'll lay my experience out in timeline form to make everything clear. October 2020, my wife tripped me and fell at home, resulting in a spiral fracture in her tibia. We saw an orthopedic surgeon who, due to her being pre-diabetic, recommended surgery instead of casting. He wanted to avoid any pressure sores developing under a cast. November 2nd, she was admitted for surgery, which went well with no complications. On the second day of her recovery, she developed pneumonia, and her O2 stats would slowly drop without a cannula. I gave her nebulizer treatments and were able to clear the pneumonia. However, at random times, her O2 would drop again. She was placed in a ventilator, as that was the only way her O2 would remain stable. Over the next week, they tried to wean her off the vent, but eventually her O2 stats would start dropping again. She was then moved to a long-term care facility where they continued to work on weaning her off the vent. About 3 months later, they were able to keep her O2 up with just a cannula and she was transferred to a recovery facility. End of March 2021. It started again. Her O2 would drop and she developed pneumonia once more. She was transferred back to the ER and remained there for a week. Easter Sunday 2021, I received a call from the hospital informing me that she had just passed away. So roughly speaking, I spent November through April visiting her daily. The amount of stress this caused, the constant ups and downs took a severe toll on me, almost to the point of unaliving myself as I felt I had nothing else to live for. While it was the worst thing that could have happened, it also resulted in the best thing. I managed to lose over 160 pounds over the next 2 years and started really focusing on my health. Story 25. My husband left me and his children after 16 years of marriage. Without warning or discussion, I'd just been diagnosed with an illness and he split. My children and I were eating from food banks while he was putting down over $60,000 a year. It was a horrible experience. It decimated what was left of my health and destroyed his children's entire world. The man even insisted on taking their phone number. I lost everything I had ever worked for and the kids lost their security of 2 parents and a home. They're grown now and I've got no contact with him. He stopped speaking to me the day he left us. Needless to say, my mental health took a beating. I'm not the person I was before, and that is sad, but we have 5 grandchildren who really don't know who he is, so I feel it's now more sad for him. Story 26. She cheated on me with a group of guys I had been palling around with for about 1.5 years. I didn't even find out until after we had a mutual breakup. About a month later, I was at the bars one night when the whole group of guys basically socially ambushed me and started taunting me into doing something stupid. When I confronted her about it, she didn't even apologize, just gave me some BS excuse that she was just chasing stupid urges. I used to be an emotional rock who could shrug off anything, but that happened in 2019 and I'm still dealing with some insecurity and anxiety issues from it. Don't cheat on people, y'all. It's a very messed up thing to do to someone, even if you hate them with all your guts. I would wish my experience on my worst enemy. Story 27. After 7 years of trying, from ages 19 to 26 and catching him in over 50 lies, he broke up with me for the 5th time. After we got back together for the 3rd time, I asked to hold off an intimacy until we felt emotionally safe, and he was still being dishonest and I wanted some time to feel safe for them and trust him. He agreed, but I caught him one night at a motel. He lied for months about what he was doing there. He went to watch Netflix on his laptop and searches for street workers came up. He still denied seeking these workers. A couple of months later, he finally came clean. He was there to have intimacy, film it, and send me the video as punishment. He said he thought I might end it all, but that wasn't enough to deter him from going through with it, and that really hurt. He swears he never followed through, but many parts of his story weren't adding up, so I questioned him for a week. They didn't like that, so he dumped me. We got back together a month later, and he was still lying about many things, so I didn't trust his good behavior, even though he sobbed, begging me to believe him. He dumped me the day after talking about the house we wanted to buy and the kids we wanted to have because listening to a priest made him feel like I was emotionally safe to be with. He then blocked me off everything. Story 28. I found out my ex was trying to cheat on me with both women and men after claiming to be a straight male. I wish I could say this was what caused me to break up with him, but his manipulation in my young age led me to believe it was a mistake and that he never actually cheated. So it took several months later to officially end the relationship. Also, not sure if this counts, but the worst was probably when I was a teen and found out my closest family member, my cousin who was only a year younger than me, was catfishing me for over 2 years. She claimed it was because I seemed lonely, but the truth is, she was obsessed with me and couldn't bear to share me with another person, so she had to be a very important person in my life. We're both women and family, so it was really twisted to find out this information. It genuinely messed up my perspective and trust in relationships for years afterward. Story 29. The dumbest thing I ever did was move deep into the mountains with a guy I'd been dating for only 3 months. Not quite Alaska-level wilderness, but very damn close. It became very unhealthy, gained a ton of weight, and stopped taking care of himself. I was no longer attracted to him whatsoever. When we met, I was drinking a lot and doing a lot of substances, and that's how our relationship began. It's almost like when I opened my eyes, I was in the middle of nowhere with a guy I didn't even like. He had a very moody personality and a hard time getting along with anyone. I didn't have the strength to leave due to deep codependent issues, low self-esteem, and so on, so I spent 3 more years moving around and being miserable. Somehow, I finally found the strength to leave, probably because he became absolutely unbearable toward the end and my family hated him. Now I'm married to the man of my dreams, but boy do I regret wasting those years with someone I never should have been with. Story 30. I moved into a new apartment that my girlfriend and I had picked out. She was finishing her lease in February, but I needed to move by December, so we decided I would move in first and she'd be added to the lease after she officially moved in later. This apartment was closer to where my girlfriend worked, at her request. It was also newer, much bigger, and had a spare bedroom, all needing to meet her rigorous standards, which also meant it was too expensive for me to afford by myself. I moved all my stuff by subway, making multiple crosstown trips with big suitcases by myself because she was busy even though she had offered to help drive. At the time, I was living in Japan with no license. Then I had to rent a van and ask a coworker to drive so I could move the big stuff. She also couldn't help that morning because of her work, but I got it all done before I went to work. Honestly, all of this was fine. These were circumstantial problems or not that big of a deal to me then, and still not that big of a deal now. If it wasn't for the fact that when I got off work and raced home to clean up from the move, she showed up with a bag of oranges and broke up with me pretty much right away. Then she cried in my arms because she was sad we were breaking up. Like, what? That situation quite literally ruined my life for a bit. Not because of missing her or any BS like that, but the debt I went into trying to get out of that apartment, the stress, the depression, the excessive weight gain. Oh, and did I mention this was December to February, right before our lockdown hit, so I literally couldn't move because no apartments in the city were taking foreigners out of fear. God, I'm doing so much better now, but my life would be very different if it wasn't for her. Maybe better. Hell, maybe worse. I try not to dwell on it. Story 31. In my first major relationship, my girlfriend blogged about every small thing I did, right or wrong, to all her friends on her Tumblr. To this day, I hate couple influencers where the girl has a camera on the guy, constantly testing him with stupid logic games or showing off how great he is. It all circles back to being half boastful and half invasive in my head. I've never been able to shake the idea that for some women, relationships are performative. Things like the soft launch drive me absolutely mad. It's like these women are billing themselves as viewed entities, and this is coming from a young man who grew up with wanting to be famous, without fully understanding what it entailed. I do have this strong aversion to the way some women operate that I know I need to address in therapy. Story 32. I am from Hong Kong, so our medical schools are undergraduate entries. Before I sat for the public examination, my boyfriend told everyone he knew that I was a future doctor. Cringe. When I received my exam grades, it was clear I couldn't meet my medical school conditional offer. He ghosted me about a month afterward, right when I finally decided to forfeit that university entry, take a gap year, and do another round of exams for other systems. It was painful to have someone you thought loved you end up bailing out at your lowest. During the relationship, he kept using POA, pickup artist tactics on me by demolishing my confidence in what I loved and constantly pressured me for intimacy. And no, he's not a medical student or a doctor. I was just some economic student who couldn't secure any decent internships at major firms in the city. This haunts me to this day. During my gap year, whenever I saw anyone that vaguely looked or had a profile like him, I would have a panic attack. I was later diagnosed with PTSD as I couldn't deal with the constant panic attacks and had one major mental breakdown. But I'm glad this diagnosis makes me functional again. Story 33. In my last relationship, my girlfriend fell in love with someone else while on the job. She came out and told me about it. I was only 18 in my senior year of high school at the time, and she was about 21. I didn't know how to feel about it. I felt that if she fell in love with someone else, there wasn't much I could actually do. I was mainly focusing on graduating in October of 2003, which is when it happened. She also told me that she was getting married in April of 2004. And the day of her wedding, I was attending my 12th grade literature class, fighting back tears. My teacher comforted me with some advice after I told her why I was crying. On a piece of paper it said, and I'm paraphrasing here, "Keep yourself busy and love will come around to find you." That was over 20 years ago. I've kept busy trying to achieve my goals, and to this day, I'm still single. I went through my 20s without a relationship, and I'm approaching my 39th birthday this year. Looks like I'm about to end my 30s without going into a relationship at all. I think one of the main reasons why I took it hard wasn't just the fact that she married another guy, but she didn't give me a slice of the wedding cake that she promised. I could have taken that as a consolation prize. "Where's my gosh darn cake slice, woman?" Story 34. They were long distance. He dumped me out of the blue 2 days before I was meant to move to his country. He simply said, "I can't do this. I don't love you anymore." With no explanation besides that. I lost everything. Apartment, job, and work visa. I was already working abroad. It not only crushed my heart and soul, but left me scrambling to figure out how the hell to survive in a country that wasn't even home for me. I had incredible friends who helped me a lot, but I ended up moving home after 2 months due to awful mental health and coping mechanisms. He contacted me a year later and admitted he had a girlfriend the whole time. I just don't understand why he'd ruin my life like that. I guess I was just that insignificant. Things have looked up since then, though. I'm engaged and have a baby on the way. Things do get better with time. I try not to think about that period, but it pops into my mind here and there, and I still feel so much anger. Screw you, Dirk. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're gonna love this. Catch you in that video.